to have everybody with us, and I hope that today you will have an opportunity to maybe think about some things or learn some things that you haven't learned before. So many people have been asking about and researching and messing with different types of AI in education that there'll probably be some things today that you've heard of before, but we hope that you walk away with something new. And again, I'll send some resources afterwards that hopefully will help as well. So as we go through today, the main focus is how do we support education in general, maybe your role as an educator or educators you support, but then also how do we use tools to support our learners, our students? What are things that are out there that we can use? And then how do we kind of stay up to date, kind of leave with some suggestions and ways to kind of stay connected? Now, this next slide I actually have shown before, but I think it's worth mentioning. I thought this was a great study done. This was a part of the WE forum, if you're familiar with them. You can check out their website. They always have some great resources around worldwide education. This is not US based necessarily. This graph specifically focused on US, UK, Singapore, and Canada, and they surveyed teachers and education institutions and really broke down what a teacher's workday could look like on average. And I think the thing here that sticks out to me that touches on what we're going to talk about today is 50% of our time as educators is not directly supporting students, or directly interacting is the better word, with students. So how can we shrink that? How can we actually interact with our kids more than we do currently, and or provide them the materials, the resources, the pieces they need to be successful if they can't interact with us part of that time? So that's where we're going to focus, and I thought this was a great piece of research to add in there for why this is important. So that's a great little piece, and again, you can get that on weforum.org is where I came from. Now, when we think about AI in education, some things I've seen, many of you probably have seen as well, that are coming up that people are using AI for, whether it's in going to ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, or it's going to one of these other tools. I'm not going to mention all of them. There's hundreds of tools that have popped up that are education AI tools. Some are free, some you can subscribe to. There's all kinds. But some common things that they're being able to create and support us in education is feedback, strategies, resources, rubrics, criteria, lesson plans, ideas, exemplar texts, documentation, even formative assessments with the answer key, which is always helpful. So these are fantastic things, right? These are time-saving things that AI is able to support us as educators with. So these are really helpful. And if you see one of those examples that I popped up, and there's 100 others, if you see one of those and you're like, man, that would be really great. I've not done that before. I've not seen how that's done. I would highly recommend you either go to ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, one of those large language models, or even just do an internet search and look up how can AI create blank, and you will come up with lots of ideas. So I would encourage you to start there if you haven't. Example I always give is just a very, very simple education prompt. I use Microsoft Copilot the most. I do use ChatGPT some as well. But in Copilot, type in what you're teaching. Type in the standards. You can see the example I dropped in the right here. Copy and paste it out of the Common Core standard and asked it to create a lesson plan specifically for a grade level, and all of a sudden it drops in all of these pieces that are fantastic. So those are really helpful and a really easy way. I hated writing lesson plans. I was a 7th grade social studies teacher. I felt like I wasted so much time writing detailed lesson plans instead of actually working on the activities I wanted to do. So that's a great way to do that. So if you've not explored that, I would highly recommend you to do that. So I'm going to ask you a question, and please utilize the chat for this. Some of the ideas I've popped up on the screen already, maybe ideas you've already heard of, just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just numeric response. Which of these are you excited about? What are things that you've seen or heard of in education that you're excited about for what we're talking about tonight? So personalized learning, learner engagement, data analysis, custom content, or automated processes. Maybe you haven't thought about one of these. Maybe you've thought about more than these. But when you see these, what are you like? Yes, that is what I can see AI being helpful with. I'm so excited to see that happen. What pops into your head when you see those? So automated processes pops up quite a bit right away. And then most people on this call so far have said personalized learning. And I think that's the kind of the title of this session probably leans to that a little bit, right? All of these are really helpful and can be really great. But I do think that personalized learning is really exciting. And I am going to lean a little bit on the Microsoft tools just because that's my background. But there are other tools that do similar things. So I don't want to exclude other things. But just for our time and purpose today, I am going to lean towards the Microsoft tools a bit and then call out some places where there might be others. And I will show in the reading coach where you're going to have AI generated reading passages. Somebody asked in the chat. And I think all of those are coming across to other tools as well in the Microsoft suite. And just to call out a couple other things before we move forward, if you haven't messed with image generation, I would highly recommend that you play with that as well. So in Copilot, back to the slide I mentioned before, instead of just dropping in and I have this example at the end, if we have time, I have a little video recording of how to do it. When you ask it to create the text, you can also create an image to go with it, right? And it's good to think about, every time I want to talk about AI, I want to mention good prompting. You have to have good prompting to get what you want. Adjective, noun, verb, style is a good format to remember. If you've not seen that before, or you've not thought about that before, write that down, take a screenshot of it. Adjective, noun, verb, style is really helpful for being able to come up with how you can remember to do a good search style and a good search tactic in prompt engineering. So this is what we used for this image here, green Amazon jungle. So we described it. We used a noun, glowing in the sunset, and a pixel art style, right? So adjective, noun, verb, style. And what's fun about that, in my opinion, especially for getting students engaged, is visuals help students engage. They like seeing something colorful, exciting, something that they can relate to. And that was so hard in social studies, sometimes finding good images to what I was teaching, or whatever you teach, put it into context. Being able to come up with a good image is really helpful, whether you're adding it to slides, adding it to Word document, adding it to your lesson in Canvas or Schoology or wherever you're putting things. So that's a really great thing to do. Something to remember, and this goes to that, like getting students to support students in their learning, is being able to ask and get what you need out of it. And then, of course, always following sources. I saw a teacher recently talk about how they were bringing to the class how they had used Copilot to create an assignment or to create a rubric or to create, get a source. They were doing it in front of the class where they were doing a Copilot search, asking Microsoft Copilot to search something that they were talking about in class. And then they talked to the students about the sources. They were showing and modeling those lateral reading skills where they looked at the prompt, they said, hey, here's the answer we have, here's the discussion topic, look, here's the resources it provided. And then they modeled how to go to those sources and be able to check that. And I thought that was a fantastic way, not only to model for our students good search habits, but also be able to teach them good, responsible use of AI. Which I thought was super helpful and really great way to do that. All right, I'm gonna come back to something in a minute, but before I do, I want to give you a chance to respond before we dive into some actual tools that we can use with students. How do you see AI being used in education so far? A couple of you talked about what you were excited about. You can actually click right on this page if you're on your laptop or mobile device. You can click that blue hyperlink on the left side of the slide, and it will open up the Microsoft form that you can then respond to. And then we'll be able to see what everybody is responding. Awesome. I see some of those coming through already. So I'm going to share that. All right, there are some coming through. Great. Text for students. So how do you see AI being used in education? reading levels, time saver, text for students. What else? What else do you see being used? Maybe it's right now or even what you see as possibilities. That's okay too. Anything else? I'm going to wait just a moment here. I love word clouds because it like brings to the front the things that are being said the most, but sometimes it grabs words. Interesting as well. Art generator, cool. Yeah, example I just gave, right? And you can also scan that QR code if that's helpful on your mobile device if you have that next to you. Seems like we always have those next to us. Awesome. Lesson instructions, I think, is really helpful. Write emails. Yeah, I know. I've done that a couple of times where it's like, okay, how do I respond to this parent, to this question, to this whatever? Help me have a formal tone that is non-aggressive, right? Get some of that stuff in there. Awesome. Okay, there's some of it came through. Titles, writing emails. Okay, text for students. Students be creative. Okay, I'd love to hear more about how you're having students be creative with AI. Most of the AIs that are out there, technically, we can't have students on unless they're over 18. Depends on the tool. I know there's some that we can use with students. Cool. So hopefully you're able to get some ideas from others and find some ways that you can use or have seen AI being used in education. Now I'm going to jump into a couple of tools. And I know this is kind of rapid fire because of our time today, but I'll send some resources afterwards as well that can hopefully help. And feel free to drop stuff in the chat as we're going through about things you've seen or questions you have. If you haven't seen Microsoft Flip, I encourage you to check it out, just info.flip.com. And Flip is a great way to visually get students to respond through video response tool. And what's awesome about Flip is they keep upgrading. They're always adding new things. It's really engaging. And one thing they've added is Copilot, Topic Copilot, will actually help you be able to come up with your topics and what you're doing and be able to put together what it is you want students to do in that response and not have to like type it all yourself and come up with all the details yourself. So highly encourage you to check that out. If you haven't used it before, go check it out. But if you have, but you haven't played with Topic Copilot yet, go to the Discovery channel or the Discovery tab in Flip and check out Topic Copilot. Something that a couple of you have already asked about in the chat or before we started was the learning accelerators. So these are the learning accelerators that are either in existence today or like math are ones that are coming in the next year. And they will be under the Coach umbrella, coach.microsoft.com. I'll come back to you in a second specifically what that means. But these are all things that are either built into Microsoft Teams or a part of the Microsoft Education Suite in general. And I'll explain why I separated those in just a second. But Microsoft Reflect can be used for staff, it can be used with students, it can be used individually as well. That's a great way just to get a pulse on kind of that SEL, right? How are you feeling today? How did you feel about the test? How are you feeling about the spring break coming up next month? Now you can ask these general questions. There's actually AI built into that to help you come up with prompts as well. Speaker Coach, I'm going to spend some time on Speaker Coach here in a moment as well. Search Coach for helping you to be able to practice, for students to be able to practice good search skills. One of the things as a social studies teacher that I would teach my students is how to use the internet effectively, cite your sources, know if the website's good or not. How many of you can use a React, you don't have to. How many of you have heard of the website of the Northwest Tree Octopus? Do we know this website? It's been around for like 20 years. When I first started teaching, I remember seeing it. It was hilarious because you would send students to it. They thought it was a real thing. And then you would tell them to really look at it and to think about, how do we know this website is real? How do we know the websites they're posting are legitimate or all that kind of stuff? So Search Coach and Search Progress help us with that. And then we're going to dive into some of these. If you've not seen Immersive Reader, it's built into a lot of third-party tools, not just Microsoft. But specifically in Microsoft Word and OneNote, there's now a new option, new as in like 6 months ago new, called Reading Coach. And if you can see it here, it's right here on the right-hand side of the slide. So when you open up Immersive Reader in Microsoft Word or Microsoft OneNote and click on the book icon, at the bottom now there's Reading Coach. And what this allows students to do is it'll listen to them reading, and it'll give them a little reading report at the end, and it'll give them some practice words. Now they've built on this and just released, I believe in January, I want to say, I could be off on that slightly. They released a standalone app and website for this, just called Reading Coach. And it's not in Immersive Reader necessarily. And this is where you get the AI built-in tools. So I'm gonna play this, and I forgot to check if my sound was on. Even if it's not, I can talk over it. So we'll see if I remembered to do that or not. Can you hear the sound? Thank you.
Start using AI, read a passage from the library, add a passage, add my own. I can look at my achievements and my history. I'm going to create a story using AI. So I get to pick my character, and I think today I'm going to do unicorn. And I get to pick what it is. I'm going to pick a stadium. And these are the different lifestyles, and this is an example of what it's like. So I think I'm going to start with number 2, because it's a little easier. All right. Or no, I'm going to start with number 3, because that's a little harder, but a little easier. It's kind of in the middle. All right. I chose that. Now it's generating my AI story. Okay, now I'm going to press this, and it's going to start reading and recording me. And I'm going to read all this, and then I'm going to stop it when I'm done.
I'm a little biased, but that's pretty cute. That happens to be my daughter's voice. And what I love about that, sorry, I didn't mean to go all the way forward. What I love about that, though, is that it gave her the opportunity, and she honestly has always been a little bit of a struggling reader, that we've had to help her along. And she got so excited to be able to create her own story with her own setting. And then it gave her practice words. Now, this is a free tool. This is on our just free Microsoft account I've created for each of my kids. And we just did this at home, and she can read them over and over again. It gives her her achievements, which are like little badges for how many stories you've read, how many times you've done it, how long you've read, how many words you've practiced. But then it also gives her history. And we can see over time, just in the short time we've been using it, how she's increased, things that she's gotten better at. And it's super encouraging. And it's all self-paced, all things that she's chosen to do. Fantastic tool. It will be rolled out into education, or it is rolled out into education as well. But you can do it in these great free accounts, and it's super engaging, and it will be built into Microsoft assignments as well, which is really helpful. So that one to me is like at the top of my list of things that I'm just so in love with right now, because of just how easy it is and engaging. Another one I'm just love and had talked about many times to adults and kids is Speaker Coach. Speaker Coach, as you can see in the example, is built into PowerPoint. And when you're presenting, you can turn it on, and it gives you feedback on how you spoke, things that you did. You can see here specifically, there's a body language feedback as well. I've used it just to help cut back on my filler words that all of us kind of sometimes struggle with. It tells you what your tone is, your pacing. That's a lot of times what we see with students, right? Is they get super nervous and they're either quiet, you can't hear them, or they talk real fast. And so it helps them give that feedback. So it's a fantastic tool, especially for those that are maybe not as comfortable speaking in front of others. Great tool. Speaker progress is coming, and this will be added in where students can get feedback based on what the teacher is asking them to do. It can be added into Teams assignments. It can record them, give them that feedback, and the teacher can actually get that. Because today in Speaker Coach, it is just to the student. The teacher doesn't get that report unless they screen record it or something like that and send it to the teacher. So this will be added to Insights, which is really exciting. The other one I mentioned was Search Coach. So this can be built into a Teams assignment or a standalone app in Microsoft Teams. I'm excited to see this also come to general availability in the web as well, but it's not there yet today. Right now it's built into Microsoft Teams. But what this is fantastic for is teaching those safe search practices and getting students to understand what is a good source. Where is this coming from? Do I know that this is a newer source, or is it really, really old? How do I know if it's accurate? Is it a .com, .edu, .org, etc.? So helping them understand that, and then of course operators and using a backslash or a slash, a dash sign for leaving certain topics out. Really helpful things that we aren't always able to teach in class just because of time. And then I couldn't not show more about Copilot just because this is such a helpful tool for helping you get better with your time. When we talk about using AI to support all learners, I'm just going to let this little background video play of how to use it as I talk. One of my favorite things that I think is getting more attention, but early on with the AI prompting, I felt like was getting overlooked, was how this gives me a tool to differentiate in my class in real time. So I can create that lesson, I can create an activity, I can create a reading passage, I can get that all ready for my kids, but then I have 6, 8, 12 different reading levels in my class. I can ask for alternatives. I can ask it to come in at a 3rd grade level. I can say, please rewrite this in a 9th grade level. I can do those very quickly and easily and be able to pull that together. And then, as I mentioned, it cites its sources, which is hugely helpful. ChatGPT is really good at summarizing and rewriting articles, but I do miss that it's not going to give me cited sources, which is essential, I feel like, in certain circumstances as well. So again, when we talk about personalized learning, I think one of the biggest things is being able to rewrite and to get alternatives and really be able to understand where, how we're able to support learners at different levels. I really believe that all of these things it's showing that Copilot can do are really helpful and can make a lesson more engaging, which also is going to support our learners. But really for me, the one that's, without getting into very, very specific tools that are, again, there's just hundreds of them. The biggest thing for me is really understanding how to do good prompting, good prompt engineering, and being able to understand, and I just realized I'm missing a slide, so I'm going to pull that up here in just one second. Really being able to understand how we can use those tools to differentiate for our students. And that to me makes a huge difference. So I'm going to see if I can add this to the chat. So I just realized I didn't add it to the slide. So I will send this as a follow-up for sure. Okay. So I'll send this as a follow-up. Can I add this as a picture in the chat? Maybe that would be a quick way to do it too. So this is on the Microsoft website. There we go. So I'll add it to the chat so you at least can see what I'm talking about. And then I'll share my screen so you can see it as well. But this is on the Microsoft website on understanding how to really do a good use of, and I'll just share my whole screen so you can see it easily. How to use Microsoft Copilot in general, specifically, but also just good prompt engineering. And I thought this was a really helpful graphic to think about what a good prompt looks like. And again, this is a great way to differentiate for our students. So how are we writing our prompts to get exactly what we want out of? And this is a really helpful way. I've used this a couple of times as like act as a helpful tutor, giving it exactly what the purpose of this is for, who it's for, and then anything specific we want it to sound like or not have in there. I've actually added a couple of times what I don't want included as well. And sometimes that's in the iteration, right? We write something and then it adds some extra things, or it adds too much of something, or it's missing some pieces. And we can then iterate that and say, okay, use what you just wrote, Copilot, but please leave out blank. So that's a really great thing to do as well. And just to do some real world examples, you can see I can ask Copilot specifically about this file, which is a great way to do that. And I can ask it different questions specifically about this, which is really helpful. And we can use that right there.